we're going to get started now. My name is Rob Daly. I am the executive director of the foundation that puts on Gales Creek Camp, and my daughter goes to camp. She has gone for like 12 years now. She's 17. I just want to let everybody know that we're going to record this, and we are going to post it uh, on our YouTube channel later. So first, I want to just introduce our camp director is here. His name's Jeb. And then I'm going to introduce Kendra, who's our host, illustrious host, and thank you for being here. Let's get started.
Okay. I am Kendra Lodewick, and I am a parent of 3 children who all have type 1. I'm also a daughter of a mom with type 1. So I have a lot of type 1 mileage and time in the community. And I am super excited for tonight's session because I know with all 3 of our kids who were diagnosed at 5, 8, and 4, respectively, there always felt to be somewhat of a gap in kind of the community and activities for kids, as much as for parents. So that's why we decided that they should all have type 1. So they all had each other. No, but um, but I think this is a really important missing piece of the puzzle, and I'm so thrilled that Ryan and Dyea, our guests here, have started Type 1 Unbound because it fits such a need in the community and is so compelling. And I can't wait for them to share it all with you and hope that everyone can take advantage of this opportunity. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Dyea and let them introduce themselves, and then we'll get started.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dyea Summers, and this is Ryan. And we'll get into some diagnosis details and things with a slideshow we've prepared for you. But just our background, we have 2 kids, Addie and Elliot. Addie's our 11-year-old with type 1 who's diagnosed at age 6. And we lived in the Portland area. I'm a Portland native, and we've lived here forever at this point. And I am in my day job a physician assistant in family medicine, and I am working part-time in urgent care. And that's to help me have the time to be a part-time pancreas. And then Ryan has a background in the digital agency world, which has been really helpful in getting our not-for-profit off the ground, having a great website, having all of these systems that work together to help us be able to serve you.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you all. We're really excited to hear your stories and get to have a good conversation about type 1 families and community. I think one thing I really enjoy about this is that we've been working on type 1 Unbound since February. And the biggest theme that I see is that in every case that we've encountered another organization, whether a for-profit or a nonprofit, a local business or a business owner, when we start telling stories about what it's like to live with or have a kid with type 1, everyone just says, how can we help? And Gales Creek included, when we first met with Rob, was just like, how can we help? And so it's just been really encouraging, and we're really excited to share what we've been building.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay.
Oh.
So bonded, not bound is kind of our motto. And as Addie was diagnosed in 2019 on her 6th birthday. And when that happened, we felt really disconnected, isolated. The reality is our friends and loved ones were trying to be helpful, but they really didn't understand. And also they were kind of afraid of helping and being there in some ways because of the responsibility that comes with type 1. And so Addie, we noticed, had started to develop some changes in her personality, being more anxious, less free-spirited. What she could do or some of her relationships started to be bound by the limitations of having type 1. But actually, within the first week of diagnosis, we ended up at a family camp at Gales Creek. And that was amazing because here was a place where I'm processing all my grieving, all of my like, oh my gosh, this is a big change. But all of these families were here and they were at different parts of their journey. And they were like, yep, I see you. I understand. And it's going to be okay. Like, it's hard, but it's going to be okay. And so that was just really inspiring for us. And we want to help aspire to get that feeling out to others in our community, the next generation of youth with type 1, so that they can thrive, our families in the area, so that we can help this next generation thrive.
Yeah, I think coming through the COVID years with this, and then seeing the juxtaposition between those feelings of loneliness and isolation compared to the next years where Addie went to camp, and started really making some really strong friendships, and our connections to some of those families became more in person. We were like super inspired by that, and we're like, we need to make this more deep, more frequent. How can we do that? So we kind of started on this path to starting a nonprofit community to try and see if we could shape some more community relationships in the Portland area.
So our mission officially as a nonprofit is that we want to encourage and enable youth with type 1 diabetes to find their true identity, value, and potential, and that it's unbound from their diagnosis. And our vision through kind of getting there is to help foster building relationships between the youth and families and help them accomplish their own goals and discover their why, like what are they passionate about, so that they have the motivation to take them through the hard times with type 1, and have their ownership of their management and leading to a healthy, joyful, and fulfilling life.
We know that the journey with type 1 is lifelong, and we've only been living with a certain part of that with our adolescent. But I think what we're trying to help is this path, and get people on the path together. At the beginning of that journey, families feel totally isolated and paralyzed and bound by the unknown. There's a lot of emotions that come along with this feeling of isolation, and kids and parents together are bearing all the weight by themselves. But our program is about extending an invitation to invite people out of isolation and into community, where in the first kind of in that first wave of bonding and starting community, that kids and parents are starting to share the weight, starting to share resources and experiences, feeling for one another and having new relationships start. But further down, when the community is really thriving and maturing, that actually develops into a true bond where now kids and parents are bearing each other's weight. There's deeper friendships, there's accountability, and there's more purpose and shared vision and belonging as a group. And that's where we see that people can really truly start to feel unbound because they're really known by this community, and not floating out there by themselves. So what we've been working on in 2024 is we really just wanted to start this out by having events that are open to the community for every kind of family, every type of kid. We don't want to necessarily have one specific focus of the types of activities, so we've been having a really wide variety, everything from board games to wakeboarding. And also because we really want to kind of promote the more intimate, smaller groups. We've had group sizes of about 8 to 12 kids, and a lot of the activities are things that might push somebody a little out of their comfort zone or enforce some kind of morale boosting challenge or invite kids to just explore some kind of area of creativity together. And so we've also had events all over the Vancouver metro area. We really want to try to support the region at large. We also want to make all these events free and really accessible because we know that the ability to get kids to and from stuff, and also the limited resources that all of our families have with managing type 1 and paying for all that. We just want to lower as many barriers as possible. So all of the events we've had so far have been free for entry. And another part of accessibility is we want to make sure that we have some food and accommodations. And if there's a third party like hosting the event, that we share more about type 1 with the event host so that they're prepared to have kids and families with type 1 there. Another thing about what we've been up to is everything so far has been done with partnerships and sponsors and volunteers. So it's really been organic and community led. So since we started in February, we've had 71 families connect with us. Of those, 44 families have come to an event, which is just incredible. I was telling the board yesterday, I didn't expect that kind of engagement so quickly. It's been so cool to meet so many families. We've had 11 events since May, and 2 of those were or in addition to those, 2 of them we did at Gales Creek Camp. And we'll show you some photos of those in a minute. But yeah, we got to come out there and do wilderness skills with the high schoolers, and that was incredible. We have 4 volunteers right now and 4 board members, so we're just getting started, but I think we've been able to see a real connection, real strong engagement, and feel like the impact is already being seen. One of the ways that we think that we've been able to do that so quickly is that we're really thinking about this as a way to get all of these different disciplines across healthcare, diabetes-centered nonprofits, youth-centered nonprofits, and then community members to all work together. And this all ships rise when we are all kind of focused on the kids and the families, and everybody wants to jump in and help somehow. So we've been able to get outreach through healthcare providers, we've been able to get places to host events through local places like Rockhaven Climbing Gym and Bricks and Minifigs and museums.
So now I get to share some of our fun photos and just kind of, give examples of what we've been able to do. One of the big things that we've really come to value is that our meetups are not about the type 1 diabetes specifically. That's part of it, because we're organically going to be around others. You're not going to be it's not odd, it's just normal. Everyone there has type 1 or knows somebody or loves somebody who has type 1. But they're really more about the rest of your personhood. Like, what do you like doing? Are you a kid who loves Lego? Okay, great. We've done some Lego meetups. The Lake Day was a big hit. We got kids out on wakeboards. Some of them were just jazzed and really adventurous and got right out there and did boarding. And other kids, like Addie, was more nervous. And she got to push her boundaries and like try something new, that was out of her comfort zone, which has so much value for her development as a person, especially a person who lives with diabetes. Like, having opportunities to stretch and grow is really important. So what you're seeing here is Lake Day and a skateboarding day. We did 2 skateboarding events that were a lot of fun. And then a bouldering day where everybody just got to go. The folks who were hosting hid Pokemon cards all around, and the kids would climb up and try to find the cards as a challenge. And then down on the lower left, you'll have a picture of the day that Ryan went out to Gales Creek to do the wilderness.
Yeah, you can see Jeb down there holding a bag of water bottles. We went out there twice over the summer and worked with the high schoolers doing kind of an overview of basic wilderness skills, the 10 essentials, fire building, making water filters, kind of the importance of preparation and nutrition, built a shelter, and really talked a lot about how and Jeb, you mentioned this earlier, how you can do anything. You just need to be a little bit more prepared than a lot of us are used to. But with just a few nudges in that direction of what you need to be prepared with, that wilderness adventures are accessible, rock climbing is accessible, kayaking, skateboarding. And then when you're doing it together, it's not only accessible, but you don't have as much anxiety about it. And that's what we saw with so many of these adventurous events, is it did push kids a little bit out of their comfort zone, but doing it together, we just saw people click right into the activities so quickly.
Legos, game time, then a couple of museums. The art museum was really fun, and we're looking to find sorry, I got distracted because I just had to message our daughter to treat a low. So reality is we're here doing this, but we're also managing her diabetes right now. And so we're waiting for her to text back and make sure that she did it. Otherwise, I'm gonna have to step out for a sec. But that's life with type 1, right? So anyway, back into just finding different kinds of activities has been a really important thing for us, because we want to help, like I said, help find their passion. So one of the things we've got coming up in February is a cartooning workshop. So that's really exciting. And, maybe it's going to be the thing that really lights your kid up, that gives them a passion and a focus and a path. That's what we're hoping to do, in addition to helping them create these friendships. We do know that we've gotten feedback from some of these events that families have exchanged numbers and then made meetups outside of our events. So it's happening. Like, the goal is working.
We're getting invited to birthday parties, and
Yep.
it's yeah.
And the organic community is growing, and we're really excited about it. And that these are opportunities that we just haven't had before. So really excited.
Just another note in the lower left, that's the Spruce Goose there. That's at the Evergreen Air and Space Museum. We went there last weekend, and we got invited to go there not only just to bring the kids to see the museum, but their interim ED and head of their DEI board wanted to create a Type 1 friendly museum pilot. And so we actually went down there and worked with him and his team to come up with some accommodations that they could apply in the museum. So when we went there last weekend, they had all of the food that they serve across 3 different cafes in carb count laminated sheets.
Yeah.
They told all of their staff members that if kids have food or drink out to treat lows on the floor, that's okay. And they even made a low room, a special room that the kids could go to and have some privacy if they needed to do a low or regulate or anything like that. So now, yeah, we're reaching out to these members of the community who aren't only saying, yes, we can go do their thing, but they're saying, how can we go to the next level? And that's really exciting.
Yeah, that was an unexpected piece of advocacy that has been really wonderful, and just like so meaningful to be able to share with the group, like, hey, there's a carb count for these foods.
Yeah.
And they're like, yes, because it just makes it easier. And then the same goes for when we've been like having events at some of these smaller locations, local businesses. We get to just educate what is type 1 diabetes. It's an autoimmune disease that broke your pancreas, and this is kind of what we have to do to keep moving and keep being healthy. Because as you know, lots of the world doesn't really understand what is type 1 versus type 2, or what it takes to live as a person with type 1 diabetes. So that's been great. So more photos because they're fun, right? But kind of the same things at the Breakthrough T1D walk, art museum picnic, and the corn maze there at the pumpkin patch. So we just got together and made an area for everybody who was meeting up to kind of stay together and go pick out pumpkins. And yeah, there were we've definitely met families who at these events, this is the first time they've ever met another type 1 kid or a type 1 that's their age. And so that's always, and they're always like, this is great. And I understand why. You can see yourself in someone else. It's so important.
Also, over the 11 events we've had, we've seen kind of a core group forming of kind of the same 5 or 6 families, and some of them hadn't met anybody before that. And then when they got to camp this year, they all knew each other already.
Yeah.
And then when we see them now at events, they're best friends. And like you can see these 2 boys in the middle, didn't know each other before Type 1 Unbound. The kid on the right, actually, I think he came to our first event and hadn't met anybody before.
Yeah.
And now when they come to events, they can't wait to see each other. So it's just been so cool to see these bonds actually happening even over such a short amount of time.
Yeah, and as we're getting to know the kids, like Ryan said, at drop off when we took Addie to camp, we saw that like, hey, it looks like they're being really nervous, and oh, that maybe they'll jive with this other person because they kind of have similar personalities. Help get them together, and then we heard from the mom that that was a way smoother drop off than the year before. And of course, it might be they're a year older and things are different, but it was really meaningful for them to have it be so much smoother and to have that connection and anchor.
All right. Well, it's just a quick glimpse into what we hope to accomplish over the next 3 years. This year has really all been about making these low barrier to entry events, getting the word out, finding those sponsorships, and growing our capacity with volunteers. In the first part of next year, we really want to focus on bringing in more intentional mentorship. So that's adults or teenagers who have type 1 who would like to just come routinely, be part of these events, more as a mentor to encourage and connect with the youth and families as someone with experience, and just kind of feed into that youth vibe in just ways that parents can't do. And then in the later part of next year, we really want to be able to host more training and glucagon certification. So all the times that we're going out and meeting these new partners in the community, like the Rock Gym, not only do we want to educate them about type 1 a little bit more, but we actually want to equip them. So if we could go in there and give them a glucagon certification, for example, then if there's a family out there whose kid's really into rock climbing and wants to go to rock climbing camp this summer, that family feels so much more comfortable saying yes, because they know that that organization has a higher level of knowledge and training. And so if we can help facilitate that, we think that that would go a long ways to that feeling of being unbound. And then lastly, in 2026, we hope to really unlock 2 things that we think would help families and the larger community. One is that we know that there are lots of families who bringing their kid and spending a couple hours at an event is really challenging. And so we want to seek the ability to do drop-off events, maybe even some kind of coordinated pickup. for those families that aren't as mobile or can't take kids to and from places as easily or stay with them. So that includes a lot about management, on-site healthcare, policies and procedures. So there's a lot to it, but we think that it's so important. We really want to get there, as well as trying to get grant funding to help provide more specific health coaching and scholarships to families that are experiencing things like burnout uh, or new diagnoses and really having a hard time getting started. So that's kind of where we're headed. And lastly, if any of this sounded cool and interesting to you, we'd love for you to get involved. Easiest way to get involved with really no obligation at all is just sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you informed of what we're up to. You can follow us on social media. We usually post pictures of our events and updates on events and share stories. And then if you like what you're seeing, come to an event. We'd love to have you. It's very welcoming. We try to make it as low barrier to entry as possible. And yeah, if you feel inspired to tell your diabetes team or other people in the community about what we're doing, those are great ways for more people to hear. And then eventually, if you'd like to consider volunteering, the more volunteers we have, the more events we can have, and the more span around the Portland, Vancouver area we can cover.
So thanks so much for your time. And yes, the questions or conversations. Our next event is in December on Friday the 13th. It's a holiday event where we're going to be making cookies and decorating cookies and have food and beverages and some crafts and things. But Community Vision has graciously donated the fourth floor, which includes an ADA above and beyond compliant kitchen that has an oven, so we can I have plans to walk a small group of kids through making a cookie recipe, and the materials have been donated or will be donated by Sebastiano. So it's delicious cookies of chocolate chip olive oil, and then we're gonna have some pre-baked cookies as well for decorating. We're gonna have a separate area for our gluten-free cookie area. So for our celiac friends, we think about that as well. We'll try as much as we can to have carb counts and everything, because yeah, it's for us and by us. We understand like some of the things that make parties more and less stressful. So we can we can try to come up play into that. So we'll have
All the food will be labeled.
yeah, celiac and some low carb options. Obviously, not everyone does cookies, but we try to make it fun for everyone who wants to come. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the cartooning in February will be at Tabor Space. We're targeting like the 5 to 15, but realistically, we've had more involvement with elementary and younger middle school. I think that's a natural occurrence, but we are looking into ways that we can engage those teens in a more meaningful way. So if you've got ideas, we're open to that. We had a great conversation earlier today on some possibilities and things that we might be able to pursue to help engage. One of the things that's really important about us is that from the get-go, it's never been about like just type 1s or just type 1 and their families. Like, we understand that a lot of people don't want to feel awkward and they need to bring somebody with them in order to be brave enough to want to come out to a thing. So that's always been fine. Like, just let us know so we can make arrangements. But if you want to bring your bestie, they're a big part of your life. They're in your community, and having them even understand type 1 and being around a bunch of type 1s is valuable, because then they get just more insight into what your life is like, right? And you don't have to do it alone. So that extended families, we've had folks that bring their grandparents and get to meet. That's pretty special. I mean, like it impacts the person with diabetes the most, right? That's just like unique, and I don't understand that because I don't have it. But it is also a family thing that impacts the whole family in different ways, and we recognize and honor that. And so open to using that and understanding. So
I thank you for your presentation. It's super inspiring, and I like have all these ideas that were going through my head, and I was really excited to see your plans for the next few years and how you're planning to evolve and grow in the spaces you're planning to kind of inhabit. It's really, really exciting, as if, you know, what you're doing right now with community events fills such a gap, but then to think of the kind of the scaffolding that you're building is really exciting, because all of those are really, you can tell you're people in the know who are in the community, because you've identified where there are some of the gaps in the system and working to fill them. So it's super exciting. I first want to see if any of the families on the call have any questions or comments that they want to share.
Hi, this is Laura Tremblay. I'm sorry, I'm standing outside.
okay.
That's why I had my camera off. But I met with you guys this morning, and yeah, I really think what you're doing is fantastic. I shared with you via email. I did reach out to my own teen with type 1, as well as some of the teenage youth ambassadors that are here in the Portland area. And my 15-year-old was definitely excited about the part about being able to bring a friend. So I do think that's super important. And then the one teenage youth ambassador that I've already heard back from her within minutes, and she's really excited about the peer-to-peer. So I know that you're not quite there yet, but I do feel like there's going to be a lot of buy-in from the youth ambassador group, who they're youth ambassadors because they do want to use their voice to empower others. So I think that'll be a great partnership going forward.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah, we had such a great conversation this morning, and I think when we thought about teens, we're doing it from our perspective of not having a teen. And then after talking to you and learning all of the work that you've done with teens, I think my my idea about when and how we can get teens involved immediately changed to being like, hey, maybe we could do this more quickly.
Yeah.
With that enthusiasm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have, and I didn't introduce myself. I apologize. So I am here in Portland. I have a 15-year-old with type 1, and then I do a fair amount of volunteer work with Breakthrough T1D, including being a co-lead for the Youth Ambassador Program, which is a similar age group, 8 to 18. But our kids tend to skew a little bit older. So, good partnership, I think. And then the Gales Creek connection, my daughter Bella has been going to Gales Creek for the last 3 years. And I do need to ask her if she did that wilderness training with you, because she was at the high school camp this past summer. So I need to ask her, but she's going to have a Friendsgiving with her Gales Creek friends on Monday. And she has in her possession 6 little T1 Unbound brochures that I'm going to tell her to go give to her friends. So I'm trying to drive some teenagers your way. Hopefully you'll thank me for it and not curse me.
Absolutely.
Well, I was really excited to see, and I appreciate those comments too, Laura. I have a 22 and a 20-year-old who both have type 1 and were youth ambassadors themselves several years ago, but also now a 14-year-old. And I was excited to see the mentoring and to hear about potential peer-to-peer. He is always up for anything, so I'm sure he would be up, especially if he could bring a friend, although he's okay in all situations for just kind of social events. But I think it would be I think he would really love the opportunity for mentoring and over time. So I was pleased to see that as an opportunity for the teenagers, in addition to just the kind of community building events for them as well. So that's exciting.
Yeah, some of the most meaningful parts of Gales Creek from a parent perspective is also just the positive influence the counselors have on
Exactly.
showing the younger generation that they can do all the things.
Yeah, I agree. I was also really really impressed by the Space Museum and or Air Museum. I can't remember what they call themselves, but Air and Space, isn't it? Something like that. But anyway, and that they're piloting this kind of type 1 specific accommodations and thinking about that proactively. And I was thinking, and you know, in addition to your plans to kind of increase that kind of provider awareness and education, I was like, God, this could be a whole other like package for similar museums that like building off what they've done and putting together like a toolkit for how to do this. So kudos to both them and to you that you had that partnership and were able to kind of test out some of those ideas. I love that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. We talked to them more. We found out that the museum community is pretty tight.
Mm-hmm.
And most people have worked at another museum or worked for or worked
Mm-hmm.
under another director there. So they all know each other. And so they said, you know what, if this becomes a permanent thing and we get some good feedback, let's talk to OMSI. Let's talk to
Yeah.
other museums. And I think maybe it was Jeb or Rob told me that one of your former camp directors is at OMSI now too, right?
Yes, our current camp director, Minion, is employed by Muzi. She doesn't work there, but she does know a lot of people there. So,
Yeah.
you know, there's so many avenues.
Right. So as we start making these connections, I think that what you're talking about is so achievable.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a very low, it was not a lot of work for them. They made some laminated sheets, they educated their staff, and they made a low room. It was, it's not that hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing.
But it means so much.
And
And that's really the key. It's like little things mean so much when
Mm-hmm.
families see those accommodations.
yeah, and those we are going to circle back with them because although it is specific to type 1, like it doesn't necessarily have to be. Like having a space that is a calm down room where it's okay to eat food periodically throughout an area is just an accommodation that makes sense for
Mm-hmm.
our society, I think. So
Mm-hmm.
just being a voice that encourages and is grateful for when these things do come up. And yeah, it's been great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I can see the snowball effect that these activities can have. It's really exciting.
I'm actually curious. Do you have a white whale event that you would love to do, something that you have always just envisioned, but it hasn't quite happened yet?
Yeah, I think it's funny is like I originally kind of thought more about a wilderness specific type 1 uh focus. And then as we started talking more, we're like, well, not everybody wants that. It's a bigger barrier to entry. But I would love for us to be able to do something that like an overnight camping or hiking type adventure.
Mm-hmm.
We have talked to other adventure-based nonprofits about partnering with them to do cool stuff
Mm-hmm.
like whitewater rafting. I think those
Mm-hmm.
are totally achievable. But yeah, like a bigger adventure, like a backpacking trip or something.
Mm-hmm. Have you talked to Bearskin Meadows, the camp in California? That's like they run all the it's for people with type 1, and it's primarily like week-long backpacking trips, and it's all outdoor wilderness
They
in
do
Northern
crazy stuff.
California.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you see the big grin.
Yeah, yeah,
I haven't talked to Bearskin Meadows.
yeah.
Bearskin, like bear, like, or
Mm-hmm.
is
Yeah,
it?
I'll put the link in the chat. How's that?
Yeah.
That's great.
And the other thing, you probably have already discussed this already, or are aware of this already, but my daughter, and I share this with Rob too, since it was through camp, but she did a couple summers. We're out on the East Coast a lot because of family at summer. So she did a 1 week, just a typical week at the Clara Barton camp in Massachusetts, but then another week, they have an outdoor adventure camp as well, where it's through Clara Barton, but they coordinate with outdoor providers and it's all kids with type 1, and they take them from, like, they start in Massachusetts, they go up to Maine, they do whitewater rafting, they do rock climbing, they go to New Hampshire and do mountain biking, and then it's like a 10-day tour and they end up back at the camp. So just some models of different providers that might be helpful to look at if you're thinking about that.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, we've talked to a couple other camp models on the East Coast and the Midwest as well. And it's so cool to see how there's so many different approaches.
Right.
And getting to talk to them gives us so many new ideas. Yeah, that's
It is. It's really inspiring. We will probably never be a camp because we have Gales Creek Camp and they do that well. And we don't have like the insurance policies and the infrastructure and the medical director and everything that would be needed at this point. Probably realistically won't ever get to there. But what we can do is like have a little bit of this overlap with these other parts of life with diabetes, so that you don't just see your friends from camp once a year, or people that you weren't like super close with, but you might have more opportunity to get close with if you see them more often.
Yes. I wasn't thinking you would necessarily run the camp, but that those providers might have examples, just even if you just want to do like one night overnight, is not just a whole camp, but just how they built that infrastructure could be useful.
yeah.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
thank you so much.
And like to that point too, we've discovered that there are a lot of other nonprofits out in the Portland area or in Oregon at large, that are focused on youth with disadvantages, youth with disabilities, and they have built out a lot of infrastructure around different types of activities. So the reason that we got to go water skiing and skateboarding was because of another organization called Anchors Outdoor Adventures. And we've met with Adventures Without Limits, who has opportunities to do whitewater rafting and
That's great.
snowshoeing. So those are totally on our radar and totally feasible. And so we'd love to make those partnerships long lasting and really make them a core of what we're extending. So like we bring the community, they facilitate the safe and well organized venture outings.
Yeah. Whitewater rafting would be a really fun teen event, but
yeah.
Yes, that would definitely draw some people in because it's so fun.
Yeah.
Well, it's super exciting.
I like in your presentation, I also noticed you were in your long-term plan that you have some training, some basic trainings around glucagon and sort of just awareness and understanding. And you also mentioned grandparents. And I remembered when years ago when my daughter was quite young and my mom moved near to us to sort of help out. And it was the ADA used to offer
the caregivers.
a caregiver training, which was amazing. I mean, the ADA closed their Portland office, and some of the things that they did were so valuable. And when they left, we were at Gales Creek Camp. We were thinking, how can we pick up some of these things? But at this point, we focus on doing camp and doing it really well. And but my mom, I sent my mom to this training. It was really cool. I mean, it kind of, we had already tried to train her and all this other stuff, but it definitely helped to have someone do a formal training, someone with, and there were other people. I think it was maybe it was for caregivers, it was for all kinds of people, but it was a really cool thing. And when you mentioned that, I thought, well, that's a really needed thing. And they also used to do safe at schools in a larger way. And
Mhm.
now it's very hard to find. I know Vancouver still does it pretty well, but it's very hard to get somebody to train people in schools. And that's one of the things we hear most is,
Mhm.
it's just a kind of a crapshoot how well your elementary school, accommodates your child. So I thought, well, there's a few needs out there that are just like gigantic. And I love that you're finding those and you're sort of developing approaches to getting into those spaces because boy, those are neat.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm passionate about it. And I've been in touch with the ADA Safe at Schools folks. And I think they're really prioritizing trying to fill that need before any caregiver kinds of training. And as a physician assistant, I kind of, uh, yeah, I'm looking into how I can serve in those roles, as it's not totally clear to me at this point. But I want to. But one thing I did do was pour through the Oregon laws, and I saw that, oh, here's who's listed who can do the glucagon training in Oregon, and Oregon just has a really simple training plan, but physician assistant wasn't there. So I contacted the
Mm.
medical board, and the lawyers fixed the problem. So I'm one step closer, but it's still a long process because I need to make sure that I'm doing it in an appropriate way, and yeah, so exploring. That's very
Wow.
the in
That
in
yeah,
the
that's
week.
more than exploring. You're like breaking down the barriers. That's a
I'm
good
trying.
job.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
I have to do it in a very careful and precise way that follows, all of the
Right.
laws and things.
Yeah.
So I'm
Absolutely.
slow process to make sure that I do
Yeah.
it correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see it being part of a meetup kind of thing. It's a neat. You have just a great, expansive sort of approach to this serving families and extended families and friends and advocacy. And I just think it's such a great having you two specifically doing this. You're so likable, also, which helps when you go and you approach like museums and stuff and they're busy and it's just nice to have somebody who's going to go, hey, this is what we're doing and this is how you can help, and they're like, oh cool, let me do that. It's so great.
Yeah, it's been fun. And just little moments like we were at a cafe and there's a comic book shop next door, and I was like, hey, let's walk in and see if they'll donate to our raffle. And then we gave them a letter and they was like, oh yeah, we could probably do that. And then like the next day they donated $150 of graphic novels. And one
Mm.
of the novels that they donated is actually written by um the lady who's doing
It's the fire.
the
Brina Bard.
Brina Bard. She's actually doing the cartooning workshop. So it's
Oh,
full
Nice.
amazing.
circle.
Yeah.
That's
And
nice and full circle.
yeah.
And
And
they-
then we had a meeting at Community Vision and dropped off a request for Nos Familia to donate coffee. And they got back to us, and their was it the owner?
one of the people that works there, so we just
Okay.
general, their mom has type 1. They're like, this is amazing. So even though it's a small community, there's a lot more connections than I think we realize. And
Mhm.
our goal is to try to bring that together. Yeah.
Mhm. Amazing.
Yeah, it's funny. We find that all the time that someone is diagnosed and or you're talking to someone and they ask what you do and then they go, oh yeah, and everybody has a connection. Almost everybody has a connection to someone with type 1, and they know it and they understand how important it is to be doing this type of connection work. It's crazy how often it happens.
Mhm.
But you just don't see it. People are not forthcoming. It's amazing how many people can be in a space and you're like, I know that 1 in 10 of these people have diabetes, basically. Well, it's one in like 50, but
So at
um,
the end of our museum visit, we were out on the playground and there was a family and the mom had a JRDF backpack on, and we're like, oh, hey, were you with our event? We didn't meet you. And she was like, what are you talking about? Oh, we noticed your JDRF backpack. And we're like, she just was there and we got to meet them and
And introduce
Ah,
introduce ourselves.
Right.
amazing.
newly diagnosed toddler. So
Yeah. So it is interesting. Like it's not something that's necessarily easily identifiable, but the more, I guess, the less stigma there is with the youth learning that it's totally normal, the more they'll talk about it, and the more they talk about it, the more normal it becomes.
Mhm.
So over time, um, it it will be something that people know more about type 1, or as much about type 1 as they do of any of the other chronic illnesses that are more widely talked about or
Mhm.
advertised.
I was also thinking how the technology is changing that. Like my kids both go to a big school, and they'll be in a huge lecture call of like 300 people, and someone else's pump goes off, and they're like, I gotta find like then they're like, there's another one of us here, and it's like then they can make that connection. But it's like now they have certain signals that they didn't have before, where to like find each other, you know, and or even visible, like someone has their decks on, or so some of those connections become more transparent now, but which I think is a good thing. And even frankly, like the other people sitting in that lecture room hearing the insulin pump, even that is just one step closer to like then they kind of start to figure out or hear or understand like, oh, this thing exists, and there's this technology they're using, and it like slowly starts to kind of absorb. So it's hopeful.
We were at a cafe once, and we heard that iconic 3 beep low alarm, and reached for
Really?
phone. There was a lady who was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and we're like, "Oh no, we just thought it was ours."
Yeah.
We thought it was our low.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the collective our low. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's the parenting perspective.
Yeah.
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 Well, we really appreciate you guys being on. This was really fun to get to know you and hear about your plans. And we are excited to partner with you in the future next summer. And we've always thought about. It's definitely expansive to be able to do those types of adventures, and it's something that we've talked about for years, but just it's just such a large leap that we couldn't do it alone. And so I could totally see partnering, to create some sort of trip, like a trip that's not at Gales Creek Camp, but however we can support. We are so excited about that because, as we've always said, there's just not enough opportunities for people with type 1, for kids with type 1. Every time there's a new opportunity, we are just like, yes, let's, because all of our my kid and Kendra's kid and Lincoln growing up, they're just, there's always like, well, you have one thing that you can do. But it's so absolutely, I think we have a big future ahead of us, so we're excited. And just thanks so much for being on.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting us. We have been so excited for this. Yeah, and we hope that those of you watching this video are inspired to come and check out one of our events.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on starting this, and thank you for starting this. Both gratitude and congratulations. It's a really big lift, and it's really needed. So very excited that it's out there.